In 2 weeks plus a day, smoking cannabis will be legal in Canada, and just because kids may not use it doesn't mean they're immune to its effects. Chris Glover is live on Hospital Row for us tonight. And Chris, doctors and researchers are warning about the effects on babies or those who live with smokers.
Dwight, this pamphlet is now on the labor and delivery floor of Mount Sinai Hospital behind me, and it warns about the risks of cannabis for fertility, pregnancy, breastfeeding, and parenting. And particularly that last one, parenting, may end up sparking some controversy with some people.
Good morning, Hollywood Hills. They're going for a bike ride in the Hollywood Hills.
Recreational cannabis user Michelle Bilodeau waits for her 22-month-old to go to bed before she consumes marijuana.
I know this is hypocritical because I will drink a beer or a glass of wine in front of my daughter, but I haven't gotten to the point yet where I'll consume cannabis around her just yet.
She says one time she had a cannabis edible before her daughter went to bed that hit her harder than normal.
It was in the privacy of my own home, so if someone is upset by that, I get it, but you know, it didn't affect me as a mother. In fact, it actually made me a little bit more engaged with her, and we had a really good time in her bath together.
She says away from her daughter, she uses edibles, oils, and vapes, but would not smoke up in front of any kids.
I think it's just the same as if someone were smoking a cigarette. We would try and keep her away from it.
Once legal in Ontario, cannabis use in public will model tobacco restrictions. It's illegal to smoke on or within 20 meters of a child's playground. McMaster University cannabis researcher James MacKillop says the impact of secondhand smoke depends on two main factors: the drug's concentration and ventilation. Open air is probably okay, but closed-off spaces could lead to cannabis exposure.
In some cases, they actually result in levels in the bloodstream that would be the equivalent of legal impairment.
Cannabis use in any form during pregnancy and breastfeeding is much more clear-cut. Don't do it.
It's absorbed into the body's fat cells, and because of that, it then leaches back out of the fat cells into the bloodstream and remains in the person's bloodstream and basically throughout the body for a much longer period of time. Unlike alcohol, which is metabolized pretty quickly.
Here.
Bilodeau says she never used cannabis while pregnant or nursing and likens safe cannabis consumption to alcohol.
I think it just really requires a bit more education and people just to be a bit more open-minded about what cannabis can bring to the table.
And she says that when her daughter gets a little bit older, she is going to be talking to her daughter about cannabis use to try to take away the shine, or what she called the mystery, of cannabis and try to normalize it in the same way that many parents talk to their kids right now about alcohol.
And Chris, incidents of children getting injured by cannabis have increased substantially over the past few years.
The Ontario Poison Centre says that it's getting a call or two a day right now, and they say that that is a substantial increase over years past. I want to show you some of those historical call records. Back in 2013, there were 116 calls to the Poison Centre about kids who had been exposed to cannabis. The numbers did stay consistent until a jump in 2016, followed by an even bigger jump in 2017. Then this year, from January to August 15th, already 211 calls to the Poison Centre about cannabis. And while many of these calls are about minor exposure problems from cannabis, like sleepiness, the Poison Centre director says sometimes the consequences are more severe.
We've had calls about seizures from marijuana we've known it's just marijuana. We've tested up to the yin-yang, sometimes the product itself and sometimes biological samples in those patients to prove that they don't have epilepsy or something else. So seizures are known to be an acute consequence of cannabis intoxication.
And so certainly one of the big warnings for parents out there who may wish to consume cannabis once it's legal is to keep that cannabis safely out of reach of their children, especially when we're talking about edibles, which, as we've reported many times on the show before, can sometimes look quite appealing and quite innocent to children. Dwight?
Thank you, Chris.